people that's around you, the knowledge, man, not necessarily the money. The money is just a tool.
What's good, trappers? It's your boy, the Wall Street Trapper. Got my beautiful co-host, the Queen Jamila. You already know we back with another dope episode of Re-Up Tuesdays. So y'all know, man, like we've been getting a lot of traction on that, Queen. And I'm not gonna lie, like you don't become a superstar out here. Like everybody, like I be reading the comments and they just be like, trap. Like they be hitting me with the, like Kanye did to Taylor Swift, like, you good and all, but Beyonce had the best album. They're like, trap, you cool and all. But these breakdowns is just so, but for me, I love it because that's why we here. Right? They just getting exposed to you.
Right.
If you're in Trappers Anonymous, you see the magic every Wednesday. I'm just saying, you feel me? So how was your week, Queen? How was your week? Let's talk about that for a second.
Man, blessed, truly, truly, truly blessed. The feedback's been great. The trappers have been letting me know. And for me, like I tell others, my mission is to serve God and serve others, period.
Ooh.
That's really all I really want to do, to be honest. And if I have something I can share, I'm gonna share it. That's how I've been most of my life. So I'm just happy that everybody's getting something out of it, and hopefully, getting towards buying that one share at a time, like we talk about all the time.
Listen, so I already had the Pyrex dish.
Right.
I already had the baking soda.
Right.
But I went and dug up something.
Lord, I'm scared. Wait, you got the scale.
They better start playing. These things now easy to find.
For real.
Went and dug up the triple beam.
He said, I got the scale already. Let's weigh it.
I got my Pyrex dish and like I got the studio really set up. Like people be like, yo, Trap, like, what are you doing? Like, I'm like, man.
You're making it home. It's a real trap house, man.
I feel comfortable. You feel me?
Exactly.
So, I don't want to beat a dead horse.
Yeah.
But I want this week, let's explain something to the people, and I think so they can understand what's going on here, right?
Right.
This week we're gonna talk about short selling.
Yeah, let's do it.
This is an interesting topic that we're gonna talk about this because people think they know what short selling is, but they don't really know what it is. It's more than just buying a stock going down, right? That's just a simple put option. Right. Put option is simply when you're saying, I think this stock or business is going to go to this price, right? And then you have the option to either take the money or the shares at that lower price. And the person on the other side has to oblige to whatever whatever option you choose. Now, most people don't want the shares, they just want the bread, right? That's how that goes. But short selling is a little bit more intricate and detailed than that, right? So while most people are typically looking for stocks to go up, value investing or whatever trick, most, 90% of investors want stocks to go up, right? And we call them, that's where the term bulls come from, right? Bulls, thrust upward. That's why most of the people look for stocks to go up. But there's this dope community of investors. It's not big.
Right.
They're bearish. Right? And bears are typically people who, they say a bear swipes down.
Correct.
Right? Yep. So the bear wants the stock to go down. So there's this community of investors who make money off of short selling or buying stocks when they go down.
Yes.
Right? Now, with that, the dope part about short sellers they are real strategic and intentional, but also thorough at looking at fundamentals.
Extremely.
Right? So, like they really like value investors on the flip side.
Yeah.
right? Because they have to essentially understand a company has, and there's this trait when we look at companies that get short sold or things of that nature. They typically all have bad fundamentals. They typically always have bad fundamentals.
I don't know of too many situations where they didn't. There's a few, but not a lot. Not a lot.
Not many, right? And with that, there's a reason for that, right? Because as a short seller, one of the things that you're essentially doing is saying, okay, this company has bad fundamentals. The stock price is typically going to go down, right? So what a short seller essentially will do is find people who own millions of shares or hundreds of thousands of shares of this company. Right. They'll borrow the shares for a certain price, right? And immediately sell them to the market.
Right.
As the stock goes down, they make money.
Like that.
They then take those shares, give them back to the people they bought it from, and they take the profit.
Right off the top.
Right off the top. Ain't no better place to get your money than off the top.
Right.
Don't give it to me on the back end. Don't give it to me and then it go. Give me mine off
early.
Give me mine off the top. So now what happens is this thing called a short squeeze. Right. This is when some people get a whiff of what's going on and they drive the price up, causing the short seller to lose money. This is where things get interesting. So what I want you to do today is let's take us on a journey of some historical short sales that happened. I want you to take us on a journey of breaking down short selling.
Right.
And then as usual, everybody looks forward to your company spotlight. Right. So without further ado, let's get in. Let's have this conversation. Let's take them to school. Let's rock it up. Let me put my skill to use today. You got it, Queen.
Let's go. So as Trapp mentioned, we're going to talk about short selling today. And to his point, it's a concept that by the time you hear it in the news, most of the activity as far as what people have done to make this a short squeeze has already happened because the short sellers have already shorted the market, right? So the squeeze can't happen unless there's a bunch of short sellers already doing that activity. So our goal today is to kind of pull back a little bit and go a little bit further upstream in the process of what happens right before the short squeeze and then take you through that part.
So hold on, before you switch over, let's answer this question.
Yeah.
Why is short selling a thing? I mean, because if we know that stocks gonna always go up, they go up a lot. Why is it that short selling is a thing? Like, why is that like damn, like everybody want their money? Why is that a thing? Like, why do people want that?
To me, great question, right? So similar to the way you said, everybody wants to get their money off the top. At least you and I want to get our money off the top, right?
Right.
The market is designed to make money, right? I think sometimes, when you're watching the ups and downs, you wonder, right? But it was specifically set up to make money. Right. Someone said this to me the other day, you go to the casino, it's designed to take your money.
That's a fact.
It's designed, set up in an effort to take your money, not for you to win. But the stock market
is a casino a short seller?
let's talk about it, right? Let's talk about it. That's a good point. And ultimately, as time has progressed, right? So it started with just being able to purchase a company on the market, invest in it, right? And then they created options and now people can short the market. So all of these things have kind of spun off from the original purpose. But at the end of the day, it's all about how can I make money, whether it's both directions, options, futures, whatever that looks like. If there's a way to make money and hedge, right, positions as well, why not? Why not? Right? But it's important, which is what we hope to do on this channel, is to kind of show you every piece of it. You don't have to play every piece of it. We're not advocating for you to go out there and short sell, but it's important that you understand it if you're a long-term investor.
Nah, that's a fact. Actually, just to, coincide or get into a little bit deeper in what you're saying, we got to understand that there's always someone on the other side. When you're buying, you have to buy that from someone. The stocks and things not just sitting around, floating around.
Right.
So they don't just go to the market and sit there, right? Somebody has to be on the other side. There's winners and there's losers, yo, right? And this is why we look at fundamentals the way that we do, so we don't get caught up in the short sale.
Correct.
That's important to know as well.
Yes.
Let's come on. I mean,
let's
get your Pyrex dish ready, Queen. Listen, Trapper tires required, man. Y'all already know, man. Get y'all pen and paper ready. If you got your Wallstreet Trapper hoodie on or your tee, put that on. This gives you superpowers. I'm trying to tell y'all, this gives y'all superpowers when y'all in this game, man. You know what I'm talking about? So let's go, Queen. It's your turn. Let's cook up. Let's do what you do.
So as Trap mentioned when we were kind of introducing the topic for today, what is short selling or shorting, right? So you place a bet that a stock is going to decline in value. Very simple. If it's sitting at $100, I would say, okay, I think it's going down to 80 and I place a bet. But in an effort to do that, I go borrow shares from another investor. So let's say I borrow 100 shares, and I'll give you an example shortly. And then I sell those shares, right? So we can go back down and I win my money. And then I buy the shares back so that I can return them to the seller. So I think it's going down. I borrow the shares, sell them at that price. Then I buy them back at a lower price and give them back to the seller, and I make the difference. That is, in effect, short selling, right? So for an example, right, because we like to break it all the way down. We want to break that brick down all the way down. If you borrow 100 shares, let's say of company A, B, C, D, at $100 a share, and you immediately sell those shares at $100, anticipating a drop to $60 a share. Then when it drops to $60 a share, you buy those shares and then return it to the seller, and you pocket the difference, that $40 difference in which you sold them at, and then ultimately bought them back to give them back to the buyer at 60 bucks. So you make $40 on those 100 shares a piece. That's short selling in essence, right? So what ends up happening with the short squeeze once all these short sellers are in the market on a bad fundamental business is, if for some reason that share price doesn't drop to $100 and it starts to creep up, let's say to 105, 110, the more that price goes up over the original price that they borrowed the shares at, that means the short seller is losing money per share. So if it goes up to $110, they've lost $10 per share, because in order, they have to give those borrowed shares back to the person they borrowed them from. If you're buying them back at $110 to give them back to the person that you purchased them from, you're paying $110 a share. You're having to buy them back $10 more per share to give them back to the person you purchased them from. That's how short sellers start to lose money. So as that price starts to creep up, what ends up happening is, I might say as a short seller, you know what? I'm going to just cut my losses. I'm going to buy them back at 110 and I'm out. I'm going to just take this $10 loss per share. But then it becomes a frenzy, because as short sellers start to back out, what ends up happening is more people are actually buying these shares from them at 110. Remember, Trap said there's got to be a buyer and a seller on each side. That causes the price to go up more. And then as the stock price rises some more, short sellers have to continue to buy higher because they didn't own the shares. They got to give them back to somebody, which then causes the price to go up some more. And the price just continues to go, and it becomes a feeding frenzy. And then this is when it become the squeeze, right? Speculators, or as we like to call them, the big fish, realize that the short sellers depending upon how many are left and how much is there, they know that they're going to have to buy it back. So because they know they have to buy those shares back, what do you think they do? Let's run it up some more, right? Because they'll pay whatever because they got to get out. They have no choice. They got to get out. They got to give those shares back. And then you ultimately see the price of the stock continue to rise until everybody's satisfied with the money that they made, and it falls out the sky from there. So that's in essence what happens to the short sellers. They first started themselves by saying, I'm going to cut my losses, causes the price to go up. Then more and more, every short seller starts to back away. And then the speculators come in and pounce on them. That's in essence what happens with the short squeeze. And it's because they borrowed those shares and they have to give them back. So they don't have a choice but to buy, which in essence sends the market up. That is the short squeeze.
And I think it's important for us to pay attention to that. So it's a few things that we can look at when we're looking at that in our average daily volume tells us something, right? So one of the reasons why it's important for us to look at the average daily volume of a company is because, let's say a company is trading around 2 million active, in the volume on average, right? 2 million people. That means 2 million people are in and out of this, buying and selling all day, right?
Right.
If you see a large spike in the daily average activity, so now listen to me, y'all. If you see a large spike, but let's say it's 2 million daily average, but it goes to 2,001,000, right? So now what happens is you have a large spike with a small influx of investors. That alone can tell us something, that there's some shorters that have entered that volume. If it's a regular at 2 million and then it goes up to 3 million or 2.2 million, and it's the whole the stock price goes up, or the volume goes up, and then it's a lot of traders inside of that, then that tells us people have found something inside of the stock that they like, maybe earnings or something like that. So basically what we're saying is if you see the volume switch and it's a lot of investors with that, then I mean a lot of people are in there in that activity. So it may not be a signal. But if you see the volume spike up and it's a small group, then now you know that some short sellers now have entered that position. And that's just something for you to look at, right? But also you can go to NASDAQ.com, right, and look up like fundamentals, and they'll tell you what's called days to cover, right? And that tells you how many days they have to cover and how many people, because there's always sellers everywhere.
Right.
So the days to cover tell you how positioned the short sellers are in that business. So just wanted to throw that in there while the queen was breaking it down, man.
You on it, King. As always, just a couple of key terms to pay attention to when you're looking at these things. So one would be the float, right? So float is the number of tradable shares that are out there. Then you have short interest, which is going to be the number of shares sold short and not yet covered, similar to what we were just talking about. And then short interest ratio that brings back in what Trap just talked about from the average daily volume, right? So you got short interest divided by the average daily trade volume. That's going to get your short ratio. And so to get into what Trap talked about, right, those days to cover, right, the number of trading days to generate enough volume to buy back the shorts. A good rule of thumb, about 10 days, right? 10 plus days to cover might indicate a crowded trade and a potential to get squeezed, right? The potential to get squeezed might be there. Not always, but for us that are fundamental investors, it's just another way for us to pay attention to what may be happening on the market, right? So that 10 plus, anything over 10 tends to be a crowded trade and you could potentially get squeezed in that situation. So wanted to make sure we shared that with you. And then we're going to cover now historical shorts, some of the biggest shorts in the history of the market, right? And it's on a variety of things. And I thought this was important so you could understand ultimately how the real big fish get it done. So starting with Andy Krager, right? He shorted the Kiwi, which is the New Zealand dollar, in the late 80s and made 300 million, right? Doesn't seem like a lot, but again, understanding his fundamentals, understood that it was going to be weak. He got in, and there you have it. Jesse Livermore, 1907 crash, made $1 million off the 1907 crash. 1925, turned around and did it on wheat, made 3 million. Then the 1929 crash, he made 100 million. So you got to imagine with inflation, what $100 million was in 1929 for all of my geeks out there that love numbers. That's a whole lot of money in 1929. Then Paul Tudor Jones, which I know a lot of people have heard of him. 1987 crash, he shorted the Dow. The Dow dropped 22%. He made 100 million in 87. George Soros shorted the Great Britain pound, made $1 billion by shorting the Great Britain pound. Sir John Templeton, one of the greats, featured in our book club right now, on the book we're reading in the book club right now, shorted the .com bustle, right? $80 million. This one is very interesting to me, right? And I challenge you guys again. Trapper tires required. Go do your homework on Jim Chanos. He shorted Enron after researching the company for 2 years and figured out fundamentally that they were cooking the books. Before anybody else realized they were cooking the books, he figured it out, shorted Enron, and obviously took his money before it hit the bottom a year later, but ultimately was one of the big names to get that money.
Let's stop for a second and talk about cooking the books. You feel me? So usually when you're looking at fundamentals of a business, you'll see what's called GAAP, right? General Accepted Accounting Practices. And what that means is principles. So that means this is a cookie cutter approach that all accountants and everybody use to break down the financials for the market. And so this is why we teach the fundamentals, so you can dig a little deeper. But cooking the books is essentially when people are manipulating their books, lying on the books. This is why we often tell people not to invest in Chinese companies, right? Because Chinese companies don't adhere to the same status quo as American companies. So they always cooking their goddamn books because you don't really know what's going on. They cook their books for everything. You know what I'm saying? So it's important that we understand that. That's why fundamental investing is so dope to me, because certain things you can't manipulate, right? Like how much money you're paying out in dividend, right? What kind of cold hard cash you have left in your cash treasury. Like those type of things you can't manipulate because it's cash that's count, but just numbers on the board, man, you can manipulate the hell out of that. You can cook them books, and a lot of people go down for cooking their books, man. You know what I'm saying? So definitely, I'm glad you hit that. And but people who don't know, Martha Stewart was caught up in that Enron play. You did? Because Martha was like, somebody gave her the tip to get her money up out of there before that happened. And Martha was like, cool. Martha got her money up out of there. And they went to ask Martha, like, yo, who told you to do something? Martha was like, man, give me my hot in the cot, man. I'm going to lay it down. You hear me? Shout out to Martha for being a gangster, man. We rock with Martha, man. Like for real, for real. Go do your year in the day like a soldier, and then come home and make more money than you did before you went in there, because the whole Black, brown community respect you, and corporate America respect you too, because they know you ain't no snitch. You feel me?
Right.
Martha, man.
Martha is not a snitch. She really is the OG of the stock market right now.
Man, I think give me my hot in the cot, man. Let's do this, man. A year in a day, I could do that in my sleep. You feel me?
Right, no worries.
Martha came home and got richer. She came home and got richer. Move over, Paula Dean. Nobody want to talk to you, you hear? So yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, let's definitely get back into that.
For sure. So Jim Chanos did some great research, right? That's the word I want to underscore. Great research to figure out fundamentally that the company was not what it said it was on paper. And we all know how that played out. Then you got John Arnold, 200% return on natural gas, right? By shorting that. And then John Paulson, he shorted some prime mortgages during the mortgage crisis, made $3 to $4 billion, right? So those are some of the historical shorts that you can go take a look at to understand what short selling really is and the amount of money that can be made on it. Not advocating for it, just want us to really understand the other side of the market that we're playing in so that we don't get caught up. And that's why it's so important to do your fundamental analysis, your fundamental research, buy and hold great companies at a great price over the long haul. That's what we're here to show you. And ultimately, this just helps you see the other side of it so that you don't get caught up in one of these types of situations similar to what we've been seeing in the news consistently, right? So with that being said, traditionally we highlight companies that we really, really love. But since we're talking about short selling, today's company spotlight is going to be on BBBY, which is Bed Bath and Beyond, right? So revenue last 5 years has been a negative 1.25%. So they've got declining revenues. EPS negative 494. Net income, right? Net income negative 614 million, right? And they've got a ton of space in stores, right? So large footprint, lots of inventory, right? So this is just some extra stuff on this company spotlight. And of course, COVID has now completely impacted their business and they were already struggling, right? So their current price target sitting around 55, 31 in the midpoint, $20 on the low. They got 10 saying hold, 3 saying sell, no buys, right? That's what the analysts are saying, right? Current price around 26 bucks, market cap is 3.2 billion. In 2020, they were up 2%. And then they hit a high in January of 53 bucks. Right? So as I'm going around this company highlight, something just ain't adding up, right? Something's not adding up. And then ultimately, if you look at some of the metrics we just covered with you, the short interest is 65%. And ultimately, the percentage of float, the short percentage of float is 82%. So heavy, 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 heavy short interest in this company. Yet we got the price going up, right? Poor fundamentals, not sure if they're going to make it. And this is the scenario that you might be faced with. So if I swiped away and moved all of this and all you saw was, the stock corrected, and now it's slowly climbing back up, but you hadn't done any fundamental research, you might consider this a buy, right? And that's where we can get in trouble because we haven't done that fundamental research to understand that this company over the long haul, for us long-term fundamental investors, may or may not be there. They may look totally different, may have to file bankruptcy, probably going to have to close more stores. And they were already in this process before COVID. No real innovation for their customers. The list goes on and on and on. So again, if you don't know all of this, you're just looking at it like, okay, this might not be a bad company. They may be back on the rise without understanding the fundamentals. So that's what we have for you guys on the company spotlight, specific to a company that is set up, primed, and ready for a short squeeze.
So one of the things I also want to add into that is I was looking at them too when we talked about it. It's one of those capital intensive businesses that we talked about, right? So think about this. When we look at businesses that are capital intensive, meaning it takes a lot for the business to run. And there's a lot of moving components about it. We talked about this a while back, saying how businesses need, in order to keep up with inflation, they need to be able to increase prices 3 to 4% a year, right? And they typically can do that by either cutting some things, or increase profit by cutting some products, or cutting people, checks, things like that. But most capital intensive businesses can't do a lot of cutting. All they can really do is raise prices. Right. And so you think about a business like this, one that's already capital intensive, but two, COVID hits. And so we can even tap into the interest coverage ratio, something we talked about a while back, and how strong are they with being able to at least make payments on the interest on the debt that they have. But also, what about the operating cash flow which they can take money from the operating cash flow without going into more debt and just pay those payments. But we see that all of that is bad on this business, right? But not only that, but we see that now they've lost a lot of business with COVID because people are like, you know what? I don't need to go in Bed Bath & Beyond. I can just order
on Amazon.
Yeah, I can just go Amazon. I can just order it online, right? So that overhead that's now struck them, it is actually going to be a dying business. So now they got to do one or two things now. They got to start consolidating, right? Closing businesses down, because now what happens is you bleed. You know what I'm saying? You have overhead because they don't own the building. So now they got to pay money to the REIT who owns it, right? They got to pay rent for that REIT that they own. And it's probably a triple net lease. So they got to pay lights, water, gas, anything that goes on with the business, right? So they got to pay that rent or pay that lease. Then they got to pay employees. And then they got to pay for warehousing. They got to pay for transportation. They got to pay for equipment. All of this still has to be paid while the income has decreased dramatically.
Sharply.
So now we just adding on to debt. You know, so it's a tough situation for them. So it definitely was a great coming for a spotlight. Also, it could be short squeeze in the making.
Yes. And you've seen that from that spike in the high to get cut back down almost to the current price of $26. I'm sure there's a lot of folks in there that made a whole lot of money short selling it. And unfortunately, hopefully no fundamental investors bought it and thought it was going to keep running.
I mean, for fundamentals, we're not even much, we're going to stay away from people like that.
Completely.
For a trapper, you see things like negative EPS, negative net income. Out the gate, that's a hell no, but
right.
You know what I'm saying? That's a hell no.
Turn around and go to other
out of here. You feel me? I'm out of here. So definitely that was a good one. So I think this week gonna teach a lot of people some things, Quinn. I'm not gonna lie.
Yes. Like I said, I hope it's one of those situations where, again, I'm not interested in short selling. That's not my wheelhouse at all. However, I know how important it is to understand what's happening around you, right? It's kind of like looking over your shoulder. You always want to be aware of your surroundings. And by understanding short selling, you're going to be fully aware of your surroundings when you're placing a long-term investment in a solid company so that you can know the indicators of when things may begin to start changing fundamentally, as well as with some of these short selling indicators. So that's the hope, that we understand the full picture. So when we start hearing all the news on TV, all that noise around a short squeeze and all that other stuff, we already know as trappers early on what's really going on and what's been going on, not just because it hit the news today or it's on Reddit, but we've known now for months, years, what's actually happening with this company and why the short sellers are now so interested. We already got it, we understand it, and we just letting it play on the news and watch everybody do what they do. That's my hope, versus getting caught up. Too many questions a lot of times happen, whether it's in the group, people reaching out, talking about companies that are frankly dead. And you've done a phenomenal job of sharing that on companies, since I've been around you, since I've been in a group of just talking about bad businesses or companies flirting with bankruptcy. You say that all the time, but yet and still, sometimes in that herd mentality, we get caught up in the news and what everybody's talking about versus staying laser focused. So I'm hoping that this explanation around short selling will help people to understand what's happening so that we don't get caught up with the herd.
And we're not trying to cause fear or panic. We just want to keep educating you all on the journey and how to be effective, efficient, and confident trappers. So listen, I think this was a great episode this week. Listen, man, I hope y'all tapping with us next week on Re-Up Tuesdays. Queen, you want to tell them one thing before we go this time?
Man, keep doing your research, right? The market doesn't move crazy over the long haul when you look at it. So always consistently do your research so you're ready to grab the bag when it comes to your price. Just keep doing your research. That's really where the money is in the research.
For sure, man. I just want to tell everybody, man, like and subscribe to this, man. We both would appreciate it as we try to just continuously grow this and You know, I know a lot of people out there saying pick this stock, pick that stock. What we want to do is show you how to, maybe if you want to pick those stocks, we want to just show you how to be great researchers so you don't follow what other people are saying, so you can confidently navigate your way through the market. It's your boy, the Wall Street Trapper, with my co-host, beautiful, lovely, talented, the Queen Jamila. We'll see y'all next week. You dig? Trap with us. You feel me?